remain on mute until you are invited to ask your question. We also request that you listen to the budget presentation entirely before raising your hand to ask a question. Just a reminder that this budget meeting, we are here to learn about the city 2022 draft budget. This is an opportunity for residents and stakeholders to share their cost-saving ideas. So we don't want to just idea how to spend. We want some ideas how to save money, please. Please also know this session has been recorded and may be shared by myself with city staff, and we might post it on social media as well. This evening, we have a presentation from our Treasurer, Chief Financial Officer, Wendy Stephenson. Wendy, maybe you can wave so people know who are Wendy. We also have other experts are available to answer questions related to their specialty. We have John Sebastian Rousseau, Area Manager of Road Services. I think John on the call somewhere, I saw it. Geraldine Wildman, Program Manager of Natural System and Rural Affairs. Where are you, Geraldine? Here she is. She's ready to rock and roll. We have Shayla. I think I said it early properly now. I hope I said it right. Shayla Dorothy, she's a program manager with the Economic Impact Project. Jen Nielsen, she's known as the Queen of the Road, but we call her tonight the Manager of Asset Management. Asset Management, and another long name with that, I think, right, Jen? Sorry. What is it? Asset management, and what else, Jen?
No, just asset management.
Asset management, okay. And we have Jennifer Turtleton, Program Manager in Bylaw Enforcement with us. And we welcome everyone who joined us tonight and other staff. We have my staff, Aaron McCracken, and we have Lisa Anderson and Sylvia Bell, taking notes, helping out, and making sure everything runs smooth. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our treasurer. Lisa, did we miss anything before we turn it over to Wendy? Where's Lisa?
Hi, I think Lisa, you covered it all, Counselor.
Okay, go ahead.
I believe Erin is here and she's going to take over the presentation.
Okay, so Wendy, we'll turn it to you.
Well, thank you so much, Eli, and thank you so much for the great introductions. Good evening, everyone. As Eli said, my name is Wendy Stephenson, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at the City of Ottawa. And I've got a short presentation to walk you through the budget process. Aaron's going to pull it up for me. And just as a bit of background, it's myself and my team that are responsible to pull together the budget for the city. And I'm going to talk about sort of its composition this evening, so you understand both our operating and our capital budgets, as well as our consultation process, and look forward to hearing your feedback at the end of it. So you can flip to the next slide, Aaron. Thank you very much. So when you look at developing our operating budget, there's a pretty simplistic equation that we use to determine the overall property taxation. And that's where we look at all the expenditures that the city has minus the revenues we have coming in. And that determines annually the property taxation that we need to be able to fund our budget and our activities. And there's an overarching framework for determining how much we need to be collected to pay for city services. And we can work backwards from a tax target, or we can build up to that number. But for us, it's really best to start with that target. And that's where we set that property tax target to make sure that our budgets are affordable. And the city has to estimate or determine any increases to expenditures that may result from inflation, or we look at things like increases from our collective agreements or changes to regulations or legislation in terms of our service offerings, as well as growth to new neighborhoods or changes in funding from other levels of government. So basically, we take a look at how our expenditures are changing and all of those things that influence that. Then we look at any offsets that we have to that in terms of savings that we have from potential efficiencies that can be achieved in our operations. Or we look at increases that come in from revenues from our fees that are charged directly to users for city services, and taxes from our new assessment. Particularly, they help pay for operating costs that are increased from servicing new neighborhoods. And this year in particular, as we build the budget for 2022, we have to look at the continued impact that COVID has had on our city operations, much like we did last year. So we know that we're going to have some impacts in terms of some of the revenues that are coming in. When we look at our operating budget for transit, we know that our ridership is not going to be as high as it should be. Those revenues will be a little bit lower. And other things like our parks and recreation facilities, where some of our programs will not be at 100% attendance. So again, that's where we have to look at our decreased revenues that we have coming in from that, but also where we can save on the expenditure side. So basically, when we look at, again, what do we need to raise in terms of taxation for the budget? That's our expenditures less our revenues. You can flip to the next slide. So this gives you a snapshot in terms of the budget that we have for 2021. You can see it broken down by service area. And our budget for 2021 was approximately $3.94 billion. And about 60% of that budget is made up of 4 key service areas. It's our what I call our water utility service, or water and sewer service, our police services, transit, and community and social services. And much of the revenue from these services comes from sources other than tax. So property tax doesn't fund these. Water and sewer is paid for revenue by the water utility bill, so basically from the users of the system. And half of the transit operating costs are paid by fare revenue that comes in from the fare box, so people actually using that service. And over 80% of our community and social services are paid for by both provincial and federal funding. And then roughly 14% of our operating budget goes towards capital cash reserves that helps us pay for infrastructure renewal and growth in both property tax or tax supported budget as well as our rate supported budget. And then the remaining 32% of the budget covers all other services that are delivered by the city. You can move to the next slide, please. So this gives you an idea in terms of the funding sources that we have for the total budget for the city. And you can see here that approximately 47% of the revenue that comes in from property taxes. We also receive an additional 4.5% from what's called payment in lieu of taxes. And that's basically other levels of government. They pay property taxes, but just in a little bit of a different way that also fund our budget. And then another 21% comes in from federal and provincial grants. And then 22% of our revenue comes from fees and charges. So things like our water utility bill or transit fares and our parks and recreational fees. Can flip to the next slide, please. So this slide shows our capital budget that we had for 2021. It was about $781 million. And you can see the high asset intensive areas, which are primarily in our water and sewer services, our transit and transportation, which also includes roads. And 60% of our capital budget for tax supported services is for the renewal or replacement of aging infrastructure. And on that rate side, so that's the water utility bill side, our water and sewer and stormwater, 91% of that is for assets and the renewal of those assets. And then the remainder is used for growth, which is primarily funded by development charges. And there's also a small number of projects identified for regulatory or strategic initiatives. And then things you don't necessarily see in this capital budget are projects that are of large importance or city building projects across the city, which require a separate report to council. And a couple of examples of those would be our central library or our light rail. You can move to the next slide, please. So this slide shows the capital funding by source, and you can see here that about 64% of the capital funding comes from our cash reserves that we put aside for capital contributions from our operating budget. So every year we contribute to our cash reserves. And then the remainder of the capital program is funded by debt or funds that come in from other levels of government, and also our development charges. You can flip to the next slide, please. So this slide shows where discretion is in our budget, and the fact that there's really little discretion in terms of reducing our spending for many of the city services. The police budget is tabled separately, and council does not have discretion to make line item changes to that. They can only approve the budget in its entirety or reject the budget in its entirety. And if we looked at budget reductions in other areas like transit or fire or paramedics or roads, those have to be accompanied by changes to our service standards. And so when I talk about service standards, those are the standards that are presented and approved by council in terms of how we actually service or provide that service to our community. And then there's also a long list of services and expenditures where there's no discretion because the services are basically mandated, or they're regulated, or they're mandatory. So things like our long-term care, our public health, our housing, and the debt charges that the city has to pay. And then if you look at where there is a little bit of discretion, there are areas where they're funded by fees, where the fees could either be increased to recover the cost of delivering that service, or in areas where there's no specific service standards, or areas where there's administrative support service. So good example of that is really the green piece of the pie in front of us, where you see those support services, where we've got finance and our human resources and information technology. You can flip to the next slide, please. So this is a snapshot in terms of our budget directions. And for 2022, Council approved our budget directions in July. And basically, they've set a municipal tax target increasing at 3%. And that includes 3 different levies. So we've got our citywide levy, which will increase at the rate of 2.6%. Our Ottawa Police Services levy, which will increase at 3%. And the reason there's a bit of a differential between Ottawa Police Services and the citywide levy is that the police are actually responsible for their own capital budget. So it's included in theirs. And so when I talked previously on the previous slide about the $781 million capital budget, that does not include police services. And then we have a transit levy, which will increase at the rate of 4.5%. And that includes a $5 million increase to the contribution of capital to replace the cancelled doubling of the provincial gas tax. And that plan is in place for approximately 5 years. You've got about a year and a bit left to make that difference up. And then the transit levy will go back down to a 3% increase overall. We also include a forecast in terms of additional taxation revenues we expect to receive from new properties in the city. Our forecast when we tabled the budget directions report was 1.4%. We actually had some good news a couple of weeks ago. MPAC is doing a really good job in terms of getting all the new properties on the roll, and our forecast is changed to 1.4%. And then probably not applicable to too many here is our rate program, so the water utility bill, and that's going to increase at 4.86%, and it's in line with the long-range financial plan that we have for water, wastewater, and stormwater. And then we also set our user fees and our charges in accordance with our fiscal framework or the long-range financial plans. And as we did last year, we will also look at some COVID-19 cost recovery for some of those incremental costs associated with the programs that we're offering. And then our capital budget is directly aligned with the development charges background study, our long-range financial plans, and our fiscal framework. You can move to the next slide, please. So this gives you an idea of timing of the process. As I had indicated earlier, our budget directions report went to council and was approved in July of this year. And we're in the process right now of doing our councillor-led public consultations. It's actually the last one this evening. And then we'll be tabling our draft budget next Wednesday on November the 3rd. And that budget will then travel through the various committees where we welcome anybody, any of our residents or anyone who wants to come can make delegations to speak to any items within those budgets and where they're deliberated and approved by the councillors, and then it will rise to council and they will adopt the budget as committee of the whole on December the 8th of 2021. You can move to the next one. So this is a really busy slide, and just so you know, all of this information is posted on ottawa.ca. It basically shows you all of the dates for all of the committee meetings for budget tabling and discussion and delegation. And as I said, the information can be found on the city's website, so you don't have to remember them now, but it's all there if you need it, if you go to www.ottawa.ca/budget. And again, these are all the meetings where public delegations can provide input and recommendations in terms of the budgets that are under discussion. You can move to the next one, please. So there's several resources that are available to you and ways that you can provide input into the budget throughout the year. Obviously, we've got a consultation going on tonight, so we certainly want to hear your thoughts, and we thank you for that. We also have a tool called Engage Ottawa. It's an online platform, and it's very comprehensive. It allows you to connect with the city in an interactive manner. And to provide input, you can also complete an online survey. It sends comments via Engage Ottawa, or you can contact your councillor. You can also get additional information on the city's website at ottawa.ca/budget. And we review every piece of feedback that comes to us. It's all considered. And I just want to thank you all very much for participating in the meeting tonight. I look forward to hearing about your priorities. And as the councillor said, also any cost saving ideas that you do have. So thank you very much. I'll turn it back to you, councillor.
Thank you very much, Wendy. And I'd now like to turn it to Aaron. Aaron, do you want to take us through the next phase of the meeting?
Good evening. We will now invite questions from residents. Please use the raise hand function at the top of your screen if you wish to ask a question. Please ask one question and one follow-up question at a time so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. Please remain on mute until you are called upon to ask your question. Once unmuted, we invite you to introduce yourself before asking your question. If you don't feel comfortable speaking, you are welcome to ask your questions in the chat. Look for the chat bubble icon at the top right of your screen. Christine has a question.
I have a question. How did somebody on the phone raise their hand?
Okay. Would you like to speak first and ask your question?
Okay, sure. So this isn't a priority or a savings, but it's sort of a completely different wild thing. So I work with some seniors who have investments that they invest, and they have a chunk of money that they carefully set aside in, well, it doesn't return a lot of return. And then they pay taxes on the interest that they get, and then they use what's left over to pay the city taxes. And it always struck me that if they could like just, you know, give that money directly to the city instead of the city's debt, and you know, split the interest difference, because what they're making is probably an awful lot less than what the city is paying in interest. If there was some way to do that, they'd be a lot less stressed. And you know, they just have less to worry about, because they know that they'd be paying less taxes. It's not, I don't know where you'd put that in the bucket, but it would be an opportunity for the city to pay less interest, and it would be an opportunity to help some of the seniors.
Would you like me to respond, Aaron?
Yes,
Please.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Gloria, great idea. And if you are welcome to sharing your information with the counselor's office, that would be great. And I say that because we have a pre-authorized payment program where you can pay your taxes in advance. You basically pay it.
No, they already do that. They already do that. It's just that yeah, no, what they do is they stick, you know, actually several $100,000 in a bank account that pays about 0.5% of interest, and then they pay taxes to the federal government on the interest that they earn. Whereas I'm like thinking, if they could like just lend the money directly to the city and then get lower property taxes in exchange, they'd be better off.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. We'll have to take that one away. Thanks a lot, Gloria, for the suggestion.
Okay.
But I just like to remind Gloria, also we have a program with the city. It's called, I think, tax deferral for the senior, Wendy. So where the eligible resident can apply, and they don't have to pay the taxes till they sell the property or their inheritance take over. So it's called tax deferral for senior. Is that the program's name?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Eli.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Aaron.
I believe Christine had her hand up. Christine McGuire.
Good evening. So nice to see you, Councillor, and thank you for the great information. My name is Christine McGuire. I'm the Executive Director of the Diefenbunker Museum here in Carp. I am also a Carp resident, so I'm here kind of wearing both hats, so very, very informed. So as we all know, it's been a very difficult 2 years for everybody, the City of Ottawa, particularly community museums, which are, you know, so key for our community, but it's also a huge economic driver for the City of Ottawa. I know the Arts and Culture Subcommittee is on November 9th, and we are registered to make a presentation. But I just wanted to hear from you both in terms of, you know, how we're taking into consideration the importance of our community museums, who are, you know, all nonprofit, who get, support from the city, but especially going into a recovery year for tourism. How is museums and culture kind of on the docket and board for the city budget and consultations?
Maybe I can start and then I'll turn it to Wendy. So Christine, as you know, as one of the co-chair and the Mayor's Economic Recovery Task Force, we are working with your colleagues from, from Ottawa Tourism, from the museum. We hear you loud and clear. And just to be fair, it's not just the museum who really saw the reduction in their productivity during the pandemic, but also, so we are trying to work together with, and we kept telling the mayor, even jokingly, we need to have the La Machine coming back to Ottawa and bring the thousands and thousands of people to the city like we did in 150. Unfortunately, we're not in that position yet. But Christine, you remember I was one of the councillors, been so long. I remember when we were the sustainability, I think Wendy, she was with us too as a deputy treasurer at the time, and work on sustainability funding for the museum, whether, especially the city help or the city funded museum. And we thought we'd done very well, but obviously the pandemic did a twist on this one. But whatever we can work with you. I know you're very active with other level of government, provincially, federally. We're all there to work together. And I know most of those funds coming to you, they're always requesting a municipal contribution, and we need to work together with you on this one. But I'd like to turn it to Wendy if she have any more to add.
Well, thanks very much, Eli, and I really appreciate your comments, Christine. We'll certainly take them back in terms of putting the budget together and trying to meet those needs. I know that one of our goals, and I am 100% certain that we will meet this goal, as we put the budget together, we will keep intact all of the service offerings that we have. We're not looking to make any changes to those because that's really important, obviously, not only for the city, but for our community and its recovery through all of this.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Next question, Linda Martin, please.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with my camera here. Can you hear me? Oh, there I am. Okay. Hello. So I don't know if Eli, if you'll remember, but earlier this summer, I did a survey of my neighbors, a petition on the state of the roads in the Dunrobin Shores area, specifically Armitage Avenue, Greenland, and Torwood. And I guess what I got out of the response back was that there was no plan to do anything with Armitage Avenue, but perhaps Greenland and Torwood were going to be on the books for the next few years of getting repaved. And so when Wendy mentioned service standards, I just wanted to ask about that because Armitage Avenue, the main section of it, has not been paved since 1988. And so I'd like to know, how do we get it further up the list, or what else can we do?
Let me start, and I think we'll turn it to Jan before I give it to the treasurer, because Jan, she's the program manager of, oh, here we go. She's the manager of the asset management. So you remember, Linda, we talked about this before. We asked staff, especially from the engineer, to revisit all the roads. They were underwater for such a long time after flood 2019. And Greenland was a road that's been used when the water table was very high, and we have heavy machinery going, like a trucks going over it to deliver sand and other. And also Armitage, I would say north of Greenland also was underwater for quite some times. Then we have Bayview Drive in Constance Bay, and then we have the Wolola Beach and Moosehead in Fitzroy and Vidon Acre. We had a few roads like the Lighthouse Road and other. So we had asked staff to prepare to check on those roads, and the report came in from the engineer. The roads is not what's the word we use, Jan? It's been compromised, but it's not. It's still safe, but it's been compromised because of the flood. So the request we sent, I believe, $3.7 million to the province, and I think we did the letter. The mayor and I, we sent it to the provincial government, was on March 15, if I'm not mistaken, and then obviously March 17, the pandemic hit us, and we didn't hear back from them. And when we heard back from the minister, a year and a half later, there were no money right now in the budget for those roads. But I have to tell you, I share your concern. We know those roads very well, and I think Jan, she got plenty of email about especially Greenland and Torwood Road. But I'd like Jan to respond. How they prioritize the roads. How come one road get priority before the other or after the other? But I'll let Jan talk about this process. Ms. Nelson.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Martin. So for starters, I can confirm that we've included Greenland on the list for renewal within the 2022 draft budget. So that one is there, and the other, we do have a line of sight on the others based on the feedback we get from residents like yourself, as well as the counselor's office. So in terms of the prioritization, we do a risk-based prioritization, and we consider not just the condition,
but also the impact. So, and it's a citywide system. So we're looking at all roads and considering them against each other. So when we consider impact, we consider the speed of travel on the road. So how much damage you can have to a vehicle, for example, if you hit a pothole, as well as traffic volumes. So that's why in some of the roads that are in the further rural areas, it can be challenging to get funding to those areas. But we do work very closely with the councillor's office to make sure that we're getting feedback on which roads have the highest needs. They do send us a list early in the spring, and our team goes out and actually drives the roads, and the councillor's office has sent me on roads tours to go take a look and see what kind of shape they're in. So does that answer your question, or did you have a follow-up?
No, that's good for now. Is there any point in trying to talk to the transportation committee or at another level, or is this just the channel that we go through your office, Eli?
Well, just for clarity, I do sit on a transportation committee as well. We work together. Most importantly, you know, you call on us once or twice a year, especially before, but now we have to send staff alone. I used to invite staff and we go together for a drive around Ward 5 and check some of the roads, and they take notes and pictures, and they send the other engineer to do sampling and core sampling. So there's a process in place, but I have to agree with you, Linda. There's a need. West Carleton, no matter how much money we spend on roads, honestly, it doesn't look like we're spending enough, because we have the largest road network in the city of Ottawa. We have 805 kilometers of road in West Carleton-March alone in Ward 5. So yes, I agree with it, but I mean, keep in touch with our office, whether you go to transportation committee or you are here, your message, I mean, we're taking notes, and as you heard from Jan, Greenland, it is in a draft budget for 2022. So we're hoping we'll be able to receive the budget and we can deliver the work on time.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to mention one more thing. We are looking at stimulus funding opportunities. So there is a stimulus program that has come out recently, and we're looking at putting an application together for those roads that the councillor had mentioned earlier. Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
Okay, next question. Mr. Holmes, would you like to go ahead?
Ken, are you, Mr. Holmes, are you there? Maybe you can go to the next speaker and we'll wait for Mr. Holmes, leave him there.
Okay.
Okay, have I unmuted now?
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Ken.
It's coming through now. This
Yes.
Teams is an interesting program. Okay. Of course, I'd like to speak about road maintenance in general. I'll end with a very pointed question, a simple question, but allow me a bit of time to go through a preamble. And I think almost everybody in the city recognizes that road maintenance continues to be underfunded. We see it in the condition of roads throughout the city. And we talked about service standards. More than 3/4 of the city's roads are below that state of good repair.
I think we lost him.
He's still showing on some of the screen, but the voices. What about if we go to Mr. Sweetnam, and when Ken comes back, we'll take him back on?
Yes, can you hear me there? I wanted to just comment on your original thing. Don't tell us how to spend more money, tell us how to spend smarter. And I guess I have a little confession to make, and it may help you in your roads budget. And that is when a couple of years ago, our road on was really in tough shape, and we expected it would get paved, but they used this new treatment. The colloquial reason was, or the colloquial thing was called chip and dip, but really it's just you put an emulsion treatment on your gravel. And I just want to say, it's been there a couple of years now, and the city did a good job, and it really looks. And I understand you can do twice as much road for the same kind of money. You can't expect the same kind of last, but it's worthwhile doing, because if it isn't a really high traffic road with lots of trucks, it'll last. So that would be my comment to the roads funder, Aaron, I think it is. Anyway, Jen, sorry, Jen. Anyway, that was our experience here, and I think people are very pleased with what our street looks like, and so I just thank him for doing that. The final thing, I just wanted to make a comment in general, and that is the 3% increase is probably a good pre-election year elevation, but as you've seen, the library budget and so many other budgets, 3% won't cut it in the long run. So after an election, maybe the time for the treasurer to say to the mayor and councillors, maybe you need to do a little more than that. I know they're able to chip on the library, they're able to get into reserves and things like that, but inflation costs are substantially more than 3%, and I think you really need to look at that if you want to try and solve all. Well, you'll never solve all the road problems in West Carleton, but I've given you one way to sort of double the area that you can cover, and I think in the long run, people will be happy. Everybody here was really unhappy because it wasn't really a real pavement, but I assure you, at the end of the day, nobody is grousing about it now. I think those are the main things. And I guess just a conclusion. I like the lady who said that she'd like to cut into the $1 billion a month profit that the banks make by loaning money directly to the city. You might, I know it'd be a lot of bookkeeping, but would do my heart good to see the city get a little better deal and maybe just cut the bank profits down just a bit. Thank you.
I'll take this first. I just want to say thank you, Phil. And Jen, Phil is talking about David Manchester Road. As you remember, we had to do, and a lot of folks, probably after 2 years on the road, they don't even know the difference between asphalt and surface treatment. So he's right. The first year we'll put the gravel, and the second year we'll put the hot seal of asphalt on it. Sometimes those surface treatment road, they last between 10 and 12 years if we don't have a lot of trucks on them, where others last maybe 18 and 20. But nevertheless, it's almost half the cost. Phil, the 3% and 2%, I'm not trying to defend the treasurer here. I'm sure she can speak for herself, but it's not a treasurer decision. It's a political decision, unfortunately. Last term of council, we went door to door and people saw the condition of our roads and they said, why you're stuck on 2%? Charge us more than 2%. So we came back and we talked among ourselves and we said we'll do the tax at 2% and 1% will go for infrastructure. So to help, to help with funding some of the project, we all know it's fallen behind when it comes to budget. 1% increase, it will give us almost $18.5 million. Is that correct, Wendy? 18 million?
Yeah, around that, like across the entire city.
Okay. So I don't want to take your job, but I'm just trying to explain it my way. Sorry. So, and that's why we come back after election of last term, and majority of us agree to have that 1%. And I think, Jen, I'd like to turn to Jen to say that 1% when went to infrastructure, how it helped us to move forward with our road and other infrastructure, not just necessarily road. Jen?
Yeah, so the 1% is really important, and we we use it to pay, like you said, not just for roads, but we also invest in parks, facilities. We have very long lists of renewal needs. So having the extra money goes a long way towards tackling some of that backlog. So we very much appreciate the extra push we got, or extra wind in the sails. So thank you.
Back to you, Erin.
Next question, Katie Ward, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Eli, and all the staff that are working late into the evening tonight for this. One thing I wanted to ask about, as a farmer specifically, and someone who, in this extremely wet season is facing the same challenges that many of us are, trying to grow food and feed our communities, and watching all of the folks headed to Scotland to the COP26 conference. I'm wondering what the commitment is to the city's climate plan in terms of how you folks are planning to fund that, and to follow through. So I'm not sure if this is Eli or maybe Geraldine or even Wendy, but I'll leave that open, because I think of climate spending and adaptation and mitigation as an investment and insurance, to help us continue to feed our community in the future. Thanks. Oh, pardon my dog.
Thank you, Katie. Jardine, you want to take a?
Sure. I'm not actually seated in the climate and resiliency group, so I'm not too up to speed on their budget, but what I can speak about is what we're doing that's special in the Rural Affairs Office. And we absolutely are funding a very exciting project, and we got to take Councillor Alshanteri out this week. He knows all about it. So with his support and city funding, we've started up a smart farm here in Ottawa. And so it's not maybe tackling some of those broader climate change that we see around transportation and other issues, but it's certainly trying to look at how do we make the farmer more resilient, how do we use technology to make them the best that they can be, and how do we increase their return on investment while doing good things for the environment. So that's what it's really all about. And we've tested out some different planting techniques this year. We're seeing some really interesting results around carbon, and we hope to be able to invite farmers out to the site as the smart farm grows, and bring people out to be able to leverage some of the technologies that we have there and just learn. So while I can't specifically to speak to a lot of the initiatives that my colleague Andrea Flowers could at the city, I'm happy to take it offline with you if you'd like to learn more about those initiatives, if Wendy or Eli are unable to speak to those directly.
Well, I was going to speak directly about what you just said about the smart farm, because I came in there so excited about what we saw, and that's in a short period of time. And Katie, I'm sure you would love to hear that. They're using, instead of, let's see, 200 units per plant, they use 140, and they get 33% increase in production. It's phenomenal. Like, I mean, we can talk about it forever, but to see it yourself is such amazing. And now I had asked if they're going to start testing the ditch water. We want to make sure how much from the pesticides, herbicide, it goes to the ditch, and that's something they're doing for next year. I think Shayla might have something about this. I mean, with the smart farm, I think we can take some. If you can send me a couple of questions, I'd like to share them with Andrea, Katie, because I know you're always interested in that area. So I would love to get her perspective on it, if you don't mind. Wendy, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can speak a little bit about it, but I very much appreciate you taking the questions and sharing them with Andrea. She is absolutely 100% the expert at the city in terms of our climate action plan. But we do have a plan. We have goals that we have set for the city in terms of reducing our GHGs. There was a report that went to committee, I want to say in the last week or so, that reported where we're at. And we're actually, in the short term, we're ahead of our goals with respect to our GHG reduction. So that's really fantastic. And then there's a couple of things. So what we're aiming to do, we do make investments every year in terms of our budget with respect to climate change and energy evolution. We're trying to get better, Katie, in terms of identifying those through the budget process. It's something we're working on. So we can clearly show residents which of the investments that we're making are helping us to reach those goals. But there's a couple of things that we've done in the last year or two. We've received some additional monies through our hydro dividend because the city owns hydro, and those monies have gone to invest in climate change projects. So there's two separate buckets of money. One was 2.6 million, I believe, and the other was 800,000. So those are being invested towards climate change projects. And then there's other things that the city does. And I know, LRT doesn't necessarily affect anybody out in West Carleton, but that is one of the projects the city is investing in, which will significantly reduce our greenhouse gas as well. So there's a lot of things that we're doing. I think we just have to get a little bit better about how we tell that story.
Do you have a follow-up question, Katie?
Maybe more just a comment. Thank you very much. Those were great answers. And I will definitely reach out to Eli about the smart farm. I find that really interesting. And yourself, Geraldine. I also like the commitment to flagging emissions reducing spending. I think that, telling the story is setting a good example for other cities to get on board with the idea too. So thank you.
Okay, if Florin would like to ask his question, go ahead, Florin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, hi. Well, I would like to pinpoint a few elements that I think will bring substance into the into what the city is bringing to us, and there are those services like transportation has been mentioned many times. In terms of, roads, basically. Yeah, everybody knows we are a bunch of, people screaming about the road status right now. And what I would like to suggest is that if these roads are improved in a differential mode, that might allow to do more roads with the same number of money. For instance, there is low traffic areas like my Crescent, which probably was never asphalted by the city. It was probably done in the 80s and nothing done since then. And it's like 50% patches. Patches that they don't last more than 3 weeks. Those kind of roads, probably they don't need the same bedding as the high traffic. And probably the cost will be lower per kilometer for this road. That's one thing. And the other aspects are how the city can help in setting up some services. The Dungrobin area. And I can say that if you want to reach a hospital or a medical center, it takes you 1 hour. I think that's unacceptable. Somebody can die until it drives to that place. So having having at least a medical center in the Dunrobin area, that would be helpful. Same thing I would say for the police. If somebody breaks into a home, probably that person can run away in a half hour. The police still is going to come up after that, because we're pretty far from probably, unless it happens accidentally, some car are in the area. Otherwise, there is no no guarantee that the policeman will show up in a necessary time. So that's related to the effectiveness of police, medical area. So at least, I know the mall in Dunrobin, was devastated by the tornado. They build up a new one, but there is no plan to build to have a medical center there. We have nothing. The closest one are Pryor, Almont, and Ottawa, basically, which are all like a 1 hour distance. So how this can be, I think if the city can help and with third parties or somehow to build a medical center in our area, that will help in that respect. And there are lots of seniors here, and even if you're driving, it's kind of a long trip, and some people can even die until they reach that closest point. I think addressing this kind of main points, yeah, of course, we're dealing with climate change, but we have very much pressing issues in our area. Because people, they start wondering, why are we paying taxes for what services? Unless except taking the garbage and something like that. I don't want to be too critical, but I think I want to pinpoint this aspects, and I think if they are addressed, people to some extent, people are going to be happy.
Okay, Florent, thank you very much. Those are good comment. If we are dealing with the provincial budget, unfortunately, we're dealing with the municipal budget. Medical center or hospitals. I've been a resident of West Carleton in the last 33 years, and we tried to have a medical center in Constance Bay to be a franchise of the Carp Family Health Center. Unfortunately, they didn't get the funding from the province to do so. So Ann Pryor is considered our hospital as well, because they receive funding from the province based on our population north of Kinburn Side Road. So basically, Dunrobin, Constance Bay, Woodlawn, Fitzroy, Galata, that area contribute through the provincial taxes to Ann Pryor Hospital, and 25% of the Ann Pryor Hospital is from resident of Ward 5. But I have to remind you, we have probably one of the best fire services in the province. We have in West Carleton alone 125 trained firefighters. They are part of the tier response. If something happened, they can respond to a call in our area, and they have been proven time and time again. They are within minutes from their neighbors to help with a triage call. We still have ambulance posted in West Carleton in my building where I am now in Kinburn Plant Center. Also, police is not about police station. Police station doesn't police people, is the people in the police. So our area is called Zone 1. It has a dedicated police officer to our area. So So it doesn't matter how far the police station is, as long as the police officer is close to where the call came from and what priority it is. That's what we're hoping they can achieve. But thank you. There's some good comment, but let me tell you, the city have a lot of good service to offer to our residents. And if you like to reach out to my office and we can talk about them one day, I'll be happy to go through them one by one. I'll be more than happy. Thank you.
Sure. I understand the budget is the budget.
Thank you.
We just need to find, ways to optimize the expenses. I understand part of the budget the city received some money from the province. So can we ask the province to add a bit more money because we lack of this services?
We did, Flora. If you heard me earlier, we even did the study for the province to help us with some of the roads got flooded in 2017 and 2019. Unfortunately, the pandemic came in and we didn't see the funding. Dr. Barry Bruce and we worked very hard, I think, before even my time in politics. That was in 2002 when they opened another medical center in Constance Bay, and he was hoping the province will fund it to keep the satellite in Constance Bay to help the resident. And I have to tell you, they had 1,200 patients in 1 year, which is unheard of the amount of people there. But unfortunately, the funding was not available, and they went back to CARP, which they expand on it, which is a good thing. CARP today, they have almost, if it's not 15, maybe 18,000 patients in the CARP Medical Center. So, I mean, it's something we can try, and we have a provincial election next year, and I hope, Florian, you'll get involved and champion for this. Constance Bay, the city, contribute over $700,000 to build, and we have a special room dedicated for a nurse practitioner who can have weekly visit to the community and help our senior, but the funding was not available. So we managed to keep funding for 2 paramedicine who can travel in Ward 5. They are paramedics funded by the province, and they can help certain patients who need help with their medication and diabetics or some of the symptoms. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about. I don't want to sidetrack the budget, but I have to tell you, I memorize all these things, so we can talk about it, you and I, at any time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Florian. Back to you, Aaron.
We have Alan Joyner up next. Alan, if you'd like to ask your question, please go ahead.
Thanks, Aaron. One thing, Wendy, I wanted to mention to you, you mentioned about initiatives through Ottawa Hydro. I had done some work with the province trying to get some electric vehicle chargers on a program that they have to spread them around the province into areas outside of major municipal areas. And we fall through the cracks because here in West Carleton, we're not on Ottawa Hydro, we're Hydro One. At least the vast majority of us out here are. Our rates are significantly higher. We get, other than all of the normal services, we get none of the benefits of any of the programs that they institute. So it's something that the city might be able to leverage a little bit on our behalf. Cost saving ideas, something with the community association here, one of the things we found was that it takes people like yourselves, the people that understand the budget, to give us some guides to how we can find cost savings. Because the presentation tonight, I've looked at a lot of budgets. They don't really mean anything when you look at it. I mean, it's a bunch of numbers, and yes, that's the percentage and things, but where are the areas where there might be some potential savings? And I'm sure that each of those groups that will run those hearings or those sessions with when people come in and talk to them would have some good ideas about what are practical ways that people in the community or community associations or other groups might be able to try to help the city to offset some of those costs. And when you're doing these kinds of presentations, or maybe in an off year when you're not actually running the full budget consultation, run some sessions for us to help us to help you. In terms of costs out here in West Carleton, I'm sure Eli knows that a lot of the folks that used to run the road services out here before it became part of the city sort of are surprised about the costs and the way that a lot of the services that are done on the roads and things in our area are done. And I would think it might be worth somebody's while to invest a little bit of time in sitting down with some of those people and just asking them about how things were done historically. Maybe it's where vehicles are stored. Maybe it's, the way that they ran crews or whatever, but there were, we had a $3 million surplus out here and our roads were in pretty good shape and had been for years and years and years. And I know costs have risen, but there must be some expertise, in the folks that had done it out here historically for doing it in an area that's quite different from the rest of the city. One of the things I hear them say is, they know the people that are running the road systems now and doing the maintenance and things, and they're not people who really were familiar with these kinds of areas. So it's just a suggestion that maybe digging in there a little bit, you might be able to find something. In terms of the actual budget, like looking at some of these items, Eli, is there a place that we can go online and look at more detail about how this funding is broken up and maybe some historical figures about it? So for example, if you give us a figure of what you're going to spend on roads this year, then we can compare it to what have been being spent historically in different parts of the city so that we can kind of analyze it a little better. There's some of that data available.
I think Jen will answer that, but when you talk about our roads, how they were, and I think that something is debatable. First of all, it's debatable. I'm not going to get in more than that. And also, the township didn't have a $3 million surplus. When we amalgamate with Ottawa, we only have $1,045,000 so many dollars, and that was set aside for the arena for recreation. So, but I'll go to Jen about. Yes, we do have every year how much we spend on roads, and I think Jen may be able to help.
Okay, so the amount of budget that we get for roads is informed by the long-range financial plan. So we update that in collaboration with finance. So it's a finance-led exercise, but we definitely work very closely with Wendy's team to contribute to that, to identify what the needs are. And in terms of roads, I have the citywide numbers. I have a bar graph without labels in front of me, but basically we've been in the order of 40 to 43 million. Some years are higher, some years are lower. And then there's a couple of years where we've had some additional one-time funding that has come in that's really helped to give us a bit of a push towards our objectives. And we're looking at continually increasing that amount year over year to try to keep up with the conditions of all the renewal needs on the roads.
Yeah, I wasn't specifically talking about roads. I mean, in general, like if there's any of the areas that you want to look at.
Okay, sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, there's some pretty big budget chunks that
yes.
It would be good if we could look at, and like we could sit down with a group of local residents and look at it and maybe try to come up with some suggestions or ideas to help.
I see.
Yeah, Alan, if there's something in particular that you're looking for, then feel free to reach out to me and we can get some of that detail for you. Our budget is also posted online, the entire document, and that's where you're going to see more details in each of the departments. Then it breaks it down by branch as well. So then you can see all of the expenditures and revenues that come in for each of the branches. So I'm happy to share that with you if you want to start with that, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. One quick point about the doctor situation, Eli. You know, I've been here for an awful lot of years. I still can't get into the West, and my family can't get into the West Carleton Clinic here because, and there are lots of people from Canada and Stittsville and areas out of our area that are here. And I know that's not a municipal issue, but it is a problem here. You say there's 18,000 patients, but how many of them are actually from here?
Well, I have to agree with you. Anyway, as a resident of Carp, I can't even get in there, so I still have my doctor downtown. So, but the problem is not just locally, though. The province said that you have to call 1-800 number, and you have to tell them if you do have a doctor or not. And if you don't, they will recommend you the first doctor available, but doesn't mean it will be in Carp. That's what we learned. So when we put our name, my wife and I, we find out we could be going to Stittsville or Richmond or somewhere else. So we thought we'd just keep our own doctor. That's the process. And anyway, it's almost like a private club. I have to agree with you there. So anyway, but if you have some ideas, you don't have to wait for budget time, Alan. You can send it to us. We're always welcoming idea about efficiency, cost saving. good idea how to save money, please, by all means, send it to us. I mean, Wendy would love to hear cost saving item, because all what you hear is just like Santa Claus, give me, give me, give me. So,
Well, maybe a session like this sometime, Wendy, would be really good because this gives a good introduction to budget and how you're doing that. Maybe a session to look at.
yeah, I know we lost Ken home, but we did have a session a few years ago, and we invite the community to this, and we work with them, and we ask them for their idea of the budget process. And what you see today, that was something I think we adopted about 8-9 years ago, Wendy, when we had people at the city hall, and we went around and asking, and we had meeting in our own ward. How would you like to see the budget process? But look, is a large budget. I get it. It's almost $4 billion budget, and it takes time for people to digest it or to go through it. But it is. But I welcome anytime somebody have ideas for cost saving. I know the next speaker will probably have a lot of idea for cost saving. Roddy Boulevard. Roddy, it's your turn to give us idea cost saving.
I'm trying to turn the camera and the microphone on. I really wish I had some ideas for cost savings, but what I'm going to try to come at you with is low cost measures that may increase income for the city, or even no cost measures. And certainly, the city is well used to the practice of fees as a measure to increase income. So I certainly would have comments on transportation. We heard those before, but I'll bypass on those and go to the comments on climate resilience and GHG reduction, which is an interesting category. And the City of Ottawa has provided the BIA with a grant to investigate the eco-industrial business park model. And hearing about farming and the smart farms is very interesting. And Geraldine, I'll be coming to you sooner or later on the rural economic development strategy. But farming is a very intense energy and GHG activity. So is light industry, and the Carleton corridor is a light industry area. One of the characteristics of eco-industrial business practices is curious, and it goes completely against typical zoning practices, although the city's new zoning about built form versus use is an evolution in that area. But oftentimes, two businesses beside each other might be very different businesses, but it turns out that they can work together in an ecological sense. One might have a waste product that the other can use as a source product. And so what I would offer is more to economic development. And that is similar to the work that's being done in the farming community, similar investigations be provided for in the light industry community, where there are opportunities to grow that industry at little or no cost to the city through zoning permissions and other economic stimulus that won't really cost anything. But the side benefit of the city, hopefully, in the corridor with 500 acres of vacant land would be property value uplift. So that'll be my my input for today. Thanks, Eli. And thank you for your work on the official plan and other staff who were here today. That was a great effort that culminated the other day. Thank you.
No, thank you, Roddy. You were one of the people we worked with. You were more than ambassador. You were a contributor to that official plan. And I said to Jan Harder today, we are very lucky to have people engaged there. The 100,000 plus people engaged with us on the official plan. So kudos to those residents who took the time, including yourself. Shayla, do you want to respond something to Roddy about economic development with the rural area? I know that's something he's always asking us, what's we doing for the rural area?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you, Roddy, for your comments. And as you know, we do have a rural economic development strategy that was approved by council about a year ago. And certainly I know you've been working with Mike Bureau and my other colleagues in economic development on your research grant program. So we're happy to work with you on that and see where it can fit in. And so you do know we'll be updating our larger economic development strategy citywide as well. So we can speak to you on that. We'll be starting that process next year on working with you to incorporate some of your ideas in that as well. And
also, Shayla, I want to thank you for bringing the the Ottawa Tourism to help with the rural program, bicycle. I have to tell you, we never seen so many bicycle in Carleton. They come to the Kin, and I think they like our area because we have good wine and good brewery. That's the trick. That's how they were so successful. So many visited, and we were very happy that walking around with the businesses, they were very happy to see that amount of people show up during the summer pandemic. But nevertheless, they helped them to survive. I don't see any more questions or hand risen, but I see Ken Holmes still showing on the list. Oh, I see Mr. Chris Burke. I hope you were listening.
If that's possible.
Can you please just give me 2 seconds, because two gentlemen has not spoken yet, and I will come back to you for sure. But just give me two. There's a gentleman by the name Chris Burke who hasn't spoke yet, and Mr. Holmes. He finally reconnected. I need to give him a chance. Mr. Burke, I hope you were listening when I said something nice about the fire services. Go ahead. Oh, here.
You know, Eli, it's always an opportunity for you to compare police and fire. So I'm glad that you got us in once, even though we only appear less than once, and police appears twice on the budget profile. Anyway, couple of quick things, and certainly from this perspective at this end, listening to all the contributors, people like Linda Martin and Alan and Phil, who made some very valuable points, supporting the great work that Wendy and Jen and Geraldine and Shayla and of course Eli and his staff do. I just had two questions. Wendy, one for you, if you can. You spoke about MPAC earlier in the evening concerning a 1.4% increase.
Sure. Let me clarify that for you. So what we project or we forecast every year is the assessment growth that we're going to get on our roll. So those are basically all the new properties that get built. They're assessed, and then they will start to pay property taxes. So we make our best estimation in terms of what is that going to look like for the year. We don't have that crystal ball to make the exact determination because that information comes in December. However, I'm sure you have read about the construction boom that is happening in our city. It has been happening over COVID. It's been good. So we are ahead. We're at actually 1.7. So it means we're going to get a little bit more money from the new properties than we had anticipated. So that's going to help us in terms of dealing with putting the budget together. So we're getting an extra, I think it's $5.5 million.
Okay. Okay, so the assessment profile from MPAC hasn't actually been, it's just a forecast at this point, right?
It's a forecast. We will get the final numbers in December, but I think you might be talking about reassessment, which is different. So if you're talking about your own property and the valuation of that property and when that's coming.
Yes.
Okay, good, really good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. Because of the pandemic, MPAC put the next reassessment cycle on pause. And so they've left the values at the last year. So they've remained the same and stable. I'm thinking that the province will be making an announcement in the next little while in terms of when that next assessment cycle is coming and what date they're going to use. But I think that the province wants to see us get out of the pandemic first.
Okay. That's exactly what I was asking earlier. So thank you for the clarification, Wendy. That's perfect. The other question that may apply here, just in terms of additional revenues, does the City of Ottawa enjoy additional revenues as a result of increased land transfer taxes?
No, we don't partake in those. That is a provincial revenue. The City of Toronto has a very special provision in the City of Toronto Act that allows them to levy that tax. They are the only city in Ontario that is allowed to do that. The province will not grant those powers to anyone else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have asked.
I appreciate that, the honesty there. It seemed watching the financial columns the other day with the revenues coming in the city of Toronto and assuming that the land transfer taxes were applicable within the municipality of Ottawa. Thank you for that answer. Okay, I'll close on just two last things, Eli, if that's okay. Number one, whoever maybe under Jen's group or certainly with some guidance from the councillors, whoever came up with the idea for putting in additional roundabouts to reduce greenhouse gases and the number of opportunities to stop at lights, certainly a way to improve everything, both in terms of traffic congestion and a reduction in greenhouse gases. Kudos to everybody who worked on that project, because I think that's a cost saving factor for sure. And my last comment would be just to respond to Alan, who said earlier that the roads in West Carleton and other infrastructure were better off. I know from the fire service point of view, going to amalgamation was a huge boom for us. We had to, run bingos and pancake breakfast just to have money to put equipment on the trucks. And since amalgamation, certainly within the fire service, because I know Eli supports it greatly, we have to ask for nothing, and we serve the citizens of West Carleton in an exemplary fashion because of the equipment and manpower and goods that are supplied by Ottawa. So thank you for that. And everybody who attended tonight, thank you for your presence and your commitment to making Ottawa a better city.
Thank you very much, Chief. Really appreciate your kind words. Mr. Holm, I see you're back, and Ken, can you hear me?
I'm having difficulty unmuting.
Okay, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
You can hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I'm talking to you from the CARP library parking lot, which normally gives me a good internet connection, but things are terrible this evening. So I'll cut to the chase and minimize the preamble, but we're aware that portions of the budget are guided, restricted by the long-range financial plan. With respect to the roads maintenance function, we're underfunded probably by about $50 million annually when you compare it with the general public guidelines of needing about 2% of the value of the infrastructure to be spent annually on maintenance. So we need to push the envelope by at least $50 million. My question is, how much can we push it in budget 2022?
Jen, you wanna, or Wendy, which one wanna take it first?
I think I'm going to defer to Wendy on this one. My team distributes the money and Wendy collects the money.
No, it's a great comment, Ken. It's something that I'm going to suggest roads alone is not alone in this in terms of the needs across the city. I mean, we have many needs in many different areas, and we try to fund as much as we can all of the priorities that the city has. I absolutely hear what you're saying, and all I can suggest to you is once the budget is tabled in 22, we can give you some information in terms of what those investments look like.
Okay, thank you for that answer. While I've got a good connection, I'd just like to comment on Philip's comment about the new road surface treatment program. I saw a few problems when it started last year because of the heat. There were problems in some areas, but this year everything seems to be okay. So I think that was a great step forward, and I think it would be worth publicizing more that innovation and showing people how we've been able to save money and extend the limited road maintenance budget. So that was a good program.
We are recording this session, Mr. Holmes, so we are recorded saying that. So thank you so much for saying this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're gonna go quickly to Katie and then Linda Martin. Hopefully we can do them before 8:30. Katie?
Thank you, Eli. I guess these are sort of two questions, which, depending on what the answer is, might be cost savings. I know that's not a great way to start, but for the snow clearing budget and how that impacts roads, because it can be a real challenge sometimes on windy days out here. Does it save the city money if they enter into agreements with farmers to, leave up rows of corn stalks near the road? And if so, are there plans to continue doing that? Because I know some years it happens and some years it doesn't.
Well, to my knowledge, this program is still on, Katie, and we do, staff make agreement with farmer to leave 10 row of corn, like we've seen them in many areas, not just in Ward 5 right across, but to my knowledge, the program is still on. Is that correct, Jen? Probably you're not, no, we don't have somebody here.
I'm not familiar with that program, sorry.
But Katie, we'll get you the answer, but I'm pretty sure we still have the program, because I know we some of our staff do talk to some of the farmers, because as you know, when you drive on CarPro, you can still see some corn left in the field to protect from the wind. So it's still there, but I can give you the number, see how many people participate in it.
Okay, thank you. It was more thinking if it saves a few passes on the snowplow, it might save some money.
Yes.
But my sort of follow-up question would be around the gentleman earlier who commented about electric car charging. We've this past year invested in a used electric vehicle, and as you know, of course, out here we're on Hydro One, and I know that's a perennial issue that isn't budget related, but we do often find, to get home is more the issue, and finding charging stations that, like, if we're getting close but not quite gonna make it, where is there a good place heading towards the rural area for us to charge our vehicles? And I know the city doesn't currently require new fuel stations to have electric car chargers, but would the city consider it? And is there some way to turn that into a budget issue, I guess? Is there a surtax or anything that you could levy against new fuel stations that don't have electric car chargers?
Well, I have to take that, Wendy, because, sorry, Katie, because the only station we know is near to our area is in Bell's Corner. And, those are, we had one in the past donated by the Hydro Ottawa. And I know we always talk about Hydro Ottawa, Hydro One. Just for the record, Hydro One prices is staying stable and Hydro Ottawa is reaching up. As you know, my ward has both Hydro One and Hydro Ottawa. But I just want you to know, thanks to Wendy and the previous treasurer, they include us in the benefit from the Hydro Ottawa endowment. So every year we receive about $20 million and some from the Hydro Ottawa endowment, and when they put it in the general coffer, so all of us would benefit from it, even if we don't contribute to it. But don't change that, Wendy, now you heard about it, so thank you. Katie, I'll get back to you about what's a possibility, whether P3 or whether private or whatever. We'll do a little bit of digging, if you don't mind, about the charging station. Linda Martin.
Yeah, I just noticed Alan's got a comment saying there's a flow station behind the vet clinic in Carp, so that's good to know. I'm just following up on what Chris Burke mentioned about roundabouts versus
Yes.
Stoplights, and I'm wondering what the plan is for the new March Road development. Do you know if there's going to be roundabouts? I'm concerned about how much the traffic's going to slow down getting out to Ward 5, coming through Canada, March Valley Road and March Road, and I'm just wondering if roundabouts are in the plan or if it's going to be stoplights, if you know. Thanks.
I don't believe it's going to be a roundabout on March Road, Linda, and we were lucky they didn't expand the urban boundary beyond San Isidore, because there was they were thought to go all the way to Murphyside Road. So really, we were lucky that we know in the past, a study showed the roundabout is cheaper than traffic light and also is then less maintenance. I could not convince Brandon Denley about this. Unfortunately, he's still trapped all over roundabout, but nevertheless, they work and people like them and people get used to them. So we want to continue with that. But I think March Road, because it's going to be 4-lane and bus lane and other, I'm not sure during that new development between San Isidore, where it's going to be 4-lane to Maxwell Bridge, if it's going to be any roundabout. But if you want, we can look at the road design and share something with you if we hear anything.
Thank you.
I see the lady with the number 266. We're going to give you a couple of minutes to ask your question, please.
Is that me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this actually falls on very nicely to some of the other things. So this is another area where I think we should investigate maybe getting more revenue. I really don't believe that the development charges are actually covering all of the costs of the development. I'll just give you two very quick examples. So you talked earlier about how you spend a lot of time trying to get a medical clinic set up and the challenges around that. And I'm completely certain that took some of your time and that took staff time, and all the residents are paying for that. And that's something that was, that's triggered by the new development, but isn't covered off by the new development. And then there's the second thing of the cost of the inconvenience to existing residents. So we're going to have traffic lights on March Road, and we're going to be spending more gas sitting at that traffic light, and we're going to be slowed down, and we're going to start wanting more services closer, because time-wise, everything else in the city is going to be moving further and further away as more and more traffic lights get added. And nowhere in the development charge calculations is there the charge for the inconvenience to all the existing residents. So I really think that the development charges should get a surcharge for all of the things that are going to be driven by the development that we don't know about, like, okay, we're going to need more charging stations, to more medical centers, and all of the inconvenience to the existing residents.
Well, you must be hearing the debate we had the last couple of days, and I believe our general manager of plan and infrastructure indicate Ottawa is one of the lowest in the province of Ontario. I think, compared to the big cities in Ontario when it comes to development charge. So that's going to be reviewed now after the official plan was just adopted yesterday. And the next is going to be two things is going to go after that. It's going to be the master transportation plan, how we're going to move around the city after we agree to that expansion, and next how we're going to pay for that. And I think you're on the right track. Development charge review will indicate to us this increase in the development charge, but you have to remember we need to do a balance between increase and keep the economy and the growth going and the affordability, because at the end of the day, increasing the development charge is going to be on the people who's buying the home. So we want to make sure people still be able to buy homes in the city of Ottawa. But that's a good discussion, and I have to tell you, we talk about this among ourselves and with our senior staff, and it's going to happen. So the increase, but no matter how development charge is, the medical center is funded by the province under the so no, we don't collect. We collect for fire hall, library, police station. We collect for many other city services, but we do not collect for medical center. That's funded totally by the province. Hospital and medical center is funded by the province. So I know, folks, I don't know if somebody still have a burning issue wants to say it before we close up, because we promised you 8:30, and if you have any question, please send them to our office to my email, and we'll send them to our staff. Our staff always great to respond to your question and your concern. I want to thank you all, especially Wendy, Jen, Shaylee, and Miss Geraldine Wildman. We won't forget about you. You're great. And thanks to all, first of all, thanks to my staff, Aaron, Lisa, and Sylvia, and thanks to all of you who joined us tonight and give us some good idea. And I hope we'll continue that dialogue. So thanks a lot, everyone. And Aaron, I'm not sure if you still have anything you want to wrap up with.
No, I think that's it, Counselor.
All right. So thank you very much, everyone. Jennifer, we should have this budget meeting in the summer so everybody can ask Bylaw what's happening. So yeah, you were just behind the scene. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us tonight.
No. Thank you. Thank you for all the great questions.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening. Thank you.